Hello there. The anti-corruption organization Transparency continues to see large loopholes for dirty money in Great Britain. Expensive real estate still belongs to Kremlin confidants. And that means almost 52,000 properties in the UK are owned by anonymous investors, some close to the Russian government, and that's according to Transparency International UK. According to a report published by the organization on Tuesday, the properties have a total value of more than 7.5 billion euros. In particular, luxury real estate in London was bought with suspicious money via opaque offshore companies. More than a fifth of the sum invested in British property, that's around 1.5 billion, is money from suspicious sources in Russia. That's what the report says. And this also involves people who are subject to sanctions and are close to the Kremlin. According to Transparency, the owners of the properties in focus also includes Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev and his wife, and Vice President Meriban Aliyeva, as well as Angola's former Vice President Manuel Domingos Vicente. Great Britain is regularly criticized for not doing enough to stem the flow of money from dubious sources into their own country. In view of the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine, London had stepped up its pace and passed a law last year that forces companies to disclose who actually owns assets located in Great Britain. However, according to Transparency International, almost half of the companies that should disclose their owners did not do so by the January 31st deadline. The companies concerned have either completely ignored the law or provided information that makes it impossible for the public to find out who they belong to. According to Transparency, the companies are partly owned by kleptocrats, oligarchs, and people who are subject to sanctions. Transparency International called on the government in London to close loopholes in the fight against money laundering and to actively enforce the rules that have been passed. Disclosing who owns property in the UK is hugely important to changing Britain's role as a dirty money hub. And still, they are assisting the Ukraine. Ben Wallace has not ruled out supplying fighter jets to Ukraine. At the same time, Wallace urged patience that week. One thing I've learned over the past years, don't include and don't exclude, is what the minister said on a visit in Portsmouth. That's the simple reality. We respond to the specific needs of Ukrainians based on what Ukrainians are saying, what our intelligence services see, and what we know about the Russians on the battlefield. And in a recent exchange of prisoners with Russia, Ukraine also recovered the bodies of 2 Britons killed in an aid operation. We managed to get back the bodies of dead foreign volunteers, said the head of the presidential office in Kiev, Andriy Yermak, on Sunday on the Telegram news channel. The 2 Britons named there, aged 28 and 48, had helped to get civilians out of combat zones in eastern Ukraine. Yermak also released video and photos of the 116 Ukrainian prisoners previously released. And I added this to this video, both Wallace and the prisoners and the fallen Britons, that because we must not forget that this war is still going on and it will get worse because everybody expects a new Russian offensive. That is why it's good news. I just want to mention it once, that before I was starting filming this, our government here in Germany finally gave the permission to others to deliver Leopard tanks and announced that the first Leopard A2 tanks will very soon go to the Ukraine, and this year also 100 Leopard A1 tanks, up to 100, will go to the Ukraine. So that's good news, but we all must not forget that this war is going on, and we must all not forget who is responsible for this war, because we have parties here in Germany, for example, on the far left and on the far right, especially the right-wing populist extremists, or many of them fascists even, they always only talk about there needs to be a negotiated solution. Well, who started this war? And who doesn't want to negotiate? I saw an article recently where they blame Boris Johnson for the war still going on, that he blocked a negotiated peace. Well, I blame Boris Johnson for a lot, but that is definitely something I do not believe. Because first of all, he couldn't have done it himself. It was especially in the economic interest of the West to get this war stopped as soon as possible, because the economic damage to the West because of the war is big. We all see it in our own wallets every day. So that is something some right-wingers, extreme right-wingers from continental Europe try to throw on Boris Johnson. Why ever? I always thought they see him as their friend. But Putin seems to be more important to the extreme right-wingers than Boris Johnson. But that is complete nonsense. But don't forget the people in Ukraine. And I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.